huh? Yeah.
Thank you, Harold.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I didn't realize you've been at it so long. You really go way back. You did
Well,
that-
yeah, first got one of these huge video cameras with a reel-to-reel.
Let me introduce you properly and so forth. And welcome very much to Conversation. A pleasure, welcome to the program. A fellow access producer here from BCAT, from Brooklyn. And he's been involved in public access and television production for a very long time. I hadn't realized that. I know him very well over the longer haul. He's a member of ACAP, and he's a producer of, he's a public access producer of a series called Green Vision,
Right.
Ecological Matters,
Right.
and he's got a wide-ranging purview of things that he's interested in. And Carl, welcome, Lawrence, very much.
Well, thank you for being for asking me, Harold.
My great good pleasure. We've known each other for a long time, but
Yeah.
I want to know more about you. And so could you share, if you would, your own background, born and raised education, and then we'll get in. We've got a couple roll-ins, and if you'd share your own background. Please.
Well, I was born in Indiana and raised in Indiana on a farm.
Really?
Yeah, on a farm, and so I was a farm boy in Indiana, basically, from German, French, you know, tenant farmers, I guess.
What town in Indiana? What town were you?
Logansport. That was near Logansport, but actually the name of the town was 12 Mile.
No, but the city. What city? Near Bloomington or?
Well, it's actually there's an actual town called Logansport, and that's about 80 miles north of Indianapolis.
Oh, north of Indianapolis, up on the plain. It's good farm country.
It's very flat.
Yeah, it's very flat and it's very good. And then you get down into hills down there, and they got way back home in Indiana.
Well, something like that, yeah.
The
The Wabash River was actually, I took my horse into the Wabash River on numerous occasions to go swimming.
Do you know the song, I Dream About the Moonlight on the Wabash?
Something.
I presume you do.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Anyway, Indiana. I'm familiar because I did the doctoral work at Indiana, at Bloomington.
Uh-huh.
And it was nice. It was a nice part of the world and everything like that. And where did you go to school then?
Well, actually, I went to Purdue University and Ball State University, which is the same place that David Letterman went to school. And I was an architecture student there.
You did architecture?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Right, as an undergraduate? And so
Right.
forth. Yeah, that's like the queen of the arts, I think. Architecture is a really important proposition, it seems
Well,
to me.
there's a lot to know, and it is important. It's not the most important thing in the world, but it's pretty important.
It's very important
interesting.
because the built environment, I mean, it's a template for the built environment, and a sense of design is very important, and a sense of beauty, and also a sense of good design. An architect has to make sure that all of the structural things fit. He has to have an overall sense of let's say you're going to put up a high-rise or something.
Right.
You got all kinds of rivets and bolts and all that, and
Right.
all that. You have to have all of that in mind as an architect when you design a structure. Or
I think the first thing that you have in mind is how people are going to feel in a space, and you worry about the space a lot and how that's working with the environment in general, you know. And so at least in school, you're taught to think about space, about what that means. So the technical end of it is important. Of course, it's important. But a building is basically a waterproof box.
yeah, but then that's also okay. But it's an art.
Of course it
It's
is.
the queen of the arts. Probably in terms of the built environment, or in terms of the environment, it has more influence than any of the other arts. We put paintings in museums, but we see the architecture all around us.
Well, when I studied art history, as a matter of fact, it was basically the study of architecture.
It was.
You can approach art history in terms of architecture because there's so much art in architecture. You know, both on the building itself, and it houses art, and you know, a lot of thinking goes into it.
You studied architecture. Did you practice architecture?
Well, I still do, actually.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I've been a designer even recently. I was working as a designer, designing apartments, and so and I'm designing things all the time. You know, so that's sort of what I do for a living, and I'm a producer here at BCAT, as an avocation. You know?
Right. Okay. Well, so you're an architect.
Right.
Well, I think that's fine. I got great respect for the architectural. I don't know. I also like very much the librarian science, you know, because they put a grid on reality and how to get and find things and everything like that. But then, every time I come across the George Washington Bridge, I wonder how in the heck did they get every rivet right in every place? And it's like a system. It's inherently a whole system that you have to have a purview of, it seems to me, in terms of and there is a lot of detail that you have to be concerned with. Can you use computer? They have a thing called CAD/CAM.
Well, CAD is computer-aided drafting.
Yeah, and do you use that a good deal in your work?
I never use it. No.
You haven't.
No.
Okay. It's not an important feature of the architecture?
Well, there's CAD drafting, which is very technical kind of drafting, and I know nothing about it really, and then there's hand drafting, which is I know a lot about, so I just hand draft it because I don't have that many projects anyway.
So you're on a thing with a pencil, a number of 2 pencils,
yeah,
and then you draw it,
many pencils,
and then you make it look like it's going to be, and everything. You can do that.
First you start out with the idea. You know, you start out with a basic sketch. You talk to the client and you take notes, and just like I did yesterday,
right.
I took notes and I do a sketch for them. We try to maybe work out something on site, and then I take my sketches back and make them more refined, and possibly do a rendering or whatever, and then do the working drawings, which
A
are very
rendering, a
technical.
drawing of what it would look like. Is that a rendering, or is it use a computer to
Yeah,
do
well,
that?
sometimes they want to know through perspective drawing,
Sure.
through what it's going to look like. So then I draw a perspective, and sometimes I draw the perspective right on site. You know, I try to draw to them so they get an idea right away. Because I'm also trying to make money selling them this service, and so it's best not to like belabor the whole process. And I think that architecture has done that as a way of isolating themselves from other working people, you know. But it's basically a skill like any other skill.
Yeah. There's a lot of new. You have to keep abreast of like new materials and things that come.
Oh, yeah.
Things are coming, and there are revolutions coming over the transom in practically all aspects of everything nowadays, including architecture and the possibilities that are there and so forth. Right.
Well, yeah.
You have to keep up with all that.
Yeah. There's a thing called Sweet's Catalog.
What's that? Yeah.
Sweet's Catalog is this series of catalogs. It's 20 catalogs they put out a year on just materials alone.
Really?
Right.
And there's new stuff coming all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I never look at it because I mean, I use basic materials, and I try not to go to all these fancy composite materials and you know, prefabricated things. You know, but sometimes you have to buy. You know, you have to know a little bit about it. But I use normal, you know, normal
Pine
materials,
wood and things,
wall building material,
wallboard
and
wallboard
the common ordinary lights, and
the old 2x4 is pretty good and everything like that.
well, it's steel stuff.
Were you familiar at all with Buckminster Fuller?
Yeah, and that's he's a man that I contacted you about, and I've actually been at a lecture with Bucky. I was because in school they would bring a series of architects in to speak to the students, and Bucky Fuller was one of those people, and I was quite honored to be in the same room with Bucky Fuller. I
When
must
would
say.
that have been about? Do you remember? Was that at college?
That was around 72.
Right. Okay.
73. Yeah. And also he came to speak at the auditorium at Ball State, and I also saw him there, and he's quite a man. He had a lot of influence on the counterculture.
Did he have yeah, he did. I think he was probably, if you take the 60s, the spirit of the 60s and so forth, then you were to get some sort of a comprehensive, because he was thrown out of Harvard for hijinks when he was a young man, something to do with a lady or something. But, and then they gave him an honorary degree, and he was interested in everything, and they couldn't figure out what field do we give him the honorary degree in. He became world famous. And they finally gave it to him in poetics, because he was a poet, but he was also architect and so forth. And he had that kind of a thing, and he had a vision that was very widespread, but he was architect, and he would be taking the idea of ephemeral, doing more with less, and having geodesic structures that would be the most efficient way to enclose space. Do you think that holds true? He was modeling nature in a very real sense.
The geodesic, of course, he's best known for the geodesic dome, and the geodesic dome has been used in a limited way for arenas and things like that. But as far as housing goes, it was complete failure.
Why?
I think that I think as housing, which is what he wanted. He ultimately, his vision was
prefabricated housing.
To have it as housing, and it never worked because I don't think the floor plan. I think it had a very limited floor plan, and you had the problem with the curved walls, in various rooms. I mean, I don't really know why it failed, but I suspect that it was because it was too limiting in terms of a floor plan. Because when you think about it, everything that goes into a house, all the appliances and everything are rectilinear.
Yeah.
And there's very little that would
adapt
to it.
Most of our structures are rectilinear.
Right. So it didn't quite. It's hard to design within that kind of space. When it's a large open space, like say the Astrodome or something, then it adapts to the curvature of the seats and so on. But to get appliances against a curved space is very limiting and difficult. So I'm guessing that's the reason.
Yeah. Also, when you have certain templates you follow and you have certain ideas about what a structure is, so you got that, and then you don't easily adapt to something new. It's hard for people to adapt to something new coming out of history. You have all those Roman temples and all those rectilinear patterns and everything like that, and they didn't have any, polymers. They didn't have any new design, new capabilities, and so forth. Like that. But we're going far afield. I just find it very interesting, architecture. And I didn't realize you were based in that, because I know you're very involved in ecology, and your Green Visions program is, and other matters.
Well,
so
I think
maybe we can segue over
I
to
think
that.
it's more important than architecture, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
Well, I'm just impressed that you got an underpinning in architecture. I think it's a great queen of the disciplines of art. Yeah. Anyway, how about, when did you get involved in things ecological, and was Fuller an inspiration there, or others?
Yeah, Bucky had an influence on my generation because of his ideas about synergy and simplicity and
elegance of design.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at his theories. The way these structures fit together are crystalline forms.
Yes, that's right.
And there are crystalline forms in nature. So in that way, I suppose he was a part of that whole movement. But he was a mathematician, and
you can't put a label on him. He wrote Synergetics, and he was
the Spaceship Earth book.
Wasn't that a great thing? Operating Manual for
Spaceship Earth, which kind of visualized and made a kind of beautiful relationship between machines and Earth, actual natural structures.
Right.
So suddenly you had a concrete metaphor for the way the Earth worked.
Yeah.
And he
was a comprehensivist. He was always looking for patterns, big patterns, and so forth. Don't you think? Yeah.
Right. So I'm fascinated by Bucky, but I don't think we came here to talk about Bucky.
Well, no, I know, but you're in trouble when you bring him up, because I'm willing to talk about him all the time. I think he's the best mind in the history of mankind. Myself. I mean, I think he's a person like that. And if you talk about the '60s, I think there were all kinds of people, Ram Dass and Ravi Shankar and all of that. But the spirit of the '60s, including Abby Hoffman and the whole ball, the anti-Vietnam, all of that kind of stuff, if there was one iconic figure that would be recognized as sort of representative of the spirit of the '60s more than anybody else on the planet, I would wager it was Bucky Fuller.
It could be.
And there's a lot of people politically active now in terms of leading the planet who have a very great disdain for the spirit of the '60s.
I would say Tim Leary is right up there too.
Tim Leary would have been up there, yeah. Well, they were friends. They were friends.
Allen Ginsberg.
Ginsberg were friends.
Jack Kerouac,
and they all
to a lesser degree, but.
And they all tipped their hat to Bucky Fuller. It seems to me, yeah. Well, anyway, enough of that. That's the thing. And Marshall McLuhan, Talia Desjardins, that kind of stuff. It was a very heady and interesting time in the '60s. I think it's destined.
Let's bring it back.
Well, I think it might be, and it might be because the whole cyber thing that's going on now, which has implications, and Bucky's idea of ephemeralization, doing more with less. Do you realize I did a program last week, if I could, Carl, with a fellow. He's older now, but he was there before there were computers. With John Van Neumann and Norbert Wiener, when they were first thinking about having something called a computer, and he told me that they're now coming down to where because the Moore's law is being exceeded.
What's being
Moore's law, you know, the doubling of the capability of the computer every 18 months has been the case since it started, and it's just doubling, and you're over on the other side of the chessboard, and it's coming exponentially. The line is going almost exponential, and they're going to be having computers that are terabyte. They're now actually coming terabyte, and the chip itself is moving toward molecular. They're going to have a computer element that'll go through the bloodstream. And that computer element is called Buckminster-Fullerene.
Oh, really?
Carbon-60 is going to be the basis of the computing as we move toward molecular computing, which is only just a few years off, and it's going to be moving faster than during Moore's law with the silicon chip and so forth. So we're all moving that way. So his contribution to design, and it's geodesic, and it mimics nature, and it's got great properties for electronic transfer of information or moving of information. But I mean, so that's a thing with him. But ecology, and he was always very ecological, and it models nature, and it models nature. And you picked up on the ecology thing from your sensitivity coming out of your architectural studies, or in general, how did you get involved with?
Maybe, but I was, like I said, I was born on a farm. I mean, you know, I raised animals, and I raised crops, gardening, and the ecological movement was happening then. When I mean, it was just you know, the Whole Earth catalog had come out, and
that was
Earth Day was I believe the first Earth Day was 1970.
That was John McConnell started the Earth Day.
I was in Chicago. I was in Chicago, and on the Loop in front of the Picasso on the first Earth Day, and I remember that day quite well.
That was 70, wasn't it?
And I put my this is a kind of an irony, but I put my ecology sticker, which was a circle with the two looping lines, the E, right, and I put that on my car.
All right.
You know, I think I had the first ecology sticker on my car, which is pretty.
I think that was the year 1970.
Yeah.
And I only bring that up because
that's what I said. I just said it.
I'm here to say that 1970 is probably in the fullness of time. The year 1970 is probably going to, in the fullness of time, be measured as year one. That there were a qualitative transformation that was occurring in the zeitgeist, or the collective consciousness, or the noosphere, that it goes unnoticed because we're all tied into historical patterns that have been exceeded. But 1970 was a time of qualitative transformation in terms of the evolution of universal consciousness. I think it'll be recognized in the fullness of time. So you were right out, Johnny on the spot in 1970 to be picking up on
I was
John
interested in it, and I'm obviously even more interested in it now.
Yeah.
So I was, you know, in architecture school, of course, we were discussing all these issues as well. And for my summer program, I tried to get, you know, take some photographs. That was my first, you know, baby steps in looking around with my camera and taking shots.
You had a camera there.
Well, I just had a still camera.
Yeah, right.
But then there was this long gap of you know, when I got out of school. I mean, the equipment was expensive then. I just sort of didn't do it.
You're talking video now? Video?
Right. Well, I have my video stuff now, but that's. I mean, there was this long gap where basically, I wasn't taking pictures of. I wasn't doing that kind of work where I was doing documentary work. Where I think I always wanted to do documentary work, and there was this long gap where I was just making art. Basically, I was making different kinds of art, and
with
just
the camera?
No, just with paints, paints and
you're an artist.
brushes.
Right. Oh, the good old
and some architecture, but
there was a lot of good video art being done. Emschweiler and Bashokas and that kind of stuff in that time and everything. But you had a Portapack early.
Yeah, well, that was a friend from Los Angeles came to where I was going to school then, at the University of Utah, and
you were at the University of Utah?
I went to the University of Utah for a couple of years.
I was at the State University of Utah in Logan, Utah.
Oh, you did?
Wasatch Mountains for 1 year. I was 1 year.
Is that right?
Yeah, way back in '67 it would have been.
Oh.
I was teaching there at
is
Utah.
that right?
Yeah, I lived a year among the Mormons. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Mitt Romney, look out. Yeah.
Wow, I was in Salt Lake City.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, anyway, it's lovely.
So I was studying painting in Salt Lake City, and everyone was doing performance art. And I wanted to do performance art. I really wanted to, and so my friend brought this video camera, which was this big camera like this, with a harness on it, and you had to strap it on your shoulder, and there had to be somebody with you that carried the tape recorder. It was a reel-to-reel tape recorder.
Reel-to-reel tape,
with
black
this
and
long,
white.
Black cable going to it.
Yeah.
So that's what we used to make performance art. We'd set that up on a tripod.
Right.
And then we perform in front of it. And so I was doing performances, and, you know, just that was part of the whole change in the sensibility of painting and doing art in general, because there was just so much conceptual art going on and performance stuff. So there was all, you know, I was doing that as well as painting.
Yeah.
And I don't really do that stuff anymore. But
you don't do that.
Not the performance stuff.
You don't do everything like you used to do in your
No, I still paint, but I don't do the performance stuff.
The hell of it is too interesting. I could go on talking to you for 20 hours easy on all kinds of things and everything. But that Portapack, that was the first time there was a thing where an individual could make television.
Right.
And you were
and
just
we did. And we did.
Yeah, we did, but it was black and white and everything. But it was an individual rather than an institution, right? It didn't have to be an institution. You could do it. And Peter Goldmark Sr. had invented videotape that made it possible, because before that they only had kinescope and things like that. So the things interrelate. The things that develop interrelate to make it possible. And you just did a little piece with me sitting here. You had a little camcorder.
Yeah,
like
I had my little camera.
It's about 10,000 times better and so small and everything. And that's an ephemeral.
Better mic, probably.
Better mic, and that's ephemeralization that's happening, or doing more with less all the time, sort of thing. Now, but you got involved with ecology, and your program is called Green Vision. I know we have a couple of clips we want to be sure and get to.
Yeah.
But talk about the series, okay?
Well, Green Vision has been on the air for at least 10 years, actually.
Good.
The first producer was Michelle Daniels.
Okay.
Danels, and she called it Green Vision, and I was good friends with Michelle, and eventually I wanted to help her, and she wanted to do other things, and I just took over the program about a year after she'd started it, and I kept the name because it had a following.
Yeah.
And I was thrown into the world of documentary filmmaking suddenly, you know.
It's exciting.
Yeah, there's no dearth of subjects or issues that to take on. I mean, there's a breaking story every week, it seems like.
It's the medium of our time. It's
immediate.
It's subsuming literacy.
It's immediate.
Yeah, it is immediate, but it's subsuming literacy in a very real sense, because you're getting back to a multi-sensorial, multimedia context, and that's where the youth is going, is toward that. And documentaries or using the multimedia and the realm of public access is a place where that can be done and then distributed.
Well, I don't know why more people don't do it.
I think they will be when they get to it. I think there's a lot of habits coming out of history where you do not do something unless you're going to be able to have it be a vocation. Everybody's mostly having to be concerned with paying rent and making their way and all that sort of thing.
Right.
And access is a realm where people can do things at very low or no cost. There's no cost at all. And it's not a thing, you take advantage of things that are emerging free, YouTube, these kind of things.
Right.
But people are thinking they want to be able to invest their attention at something that's going to realize income.
Right.
They're all wage slaves in the terms of Marxists.
Right. And well, you can make money with video, but that's not primarily why I got into it.
Well, I made the segue, the connection with public access as opposed to the networks. You see, if you're really good, you're going to be on NBC and
I
Star,
suppose.
that kind of thing, and that's very deeply rooted in the human psyche. They'll get over that when we begin to realize that we've got a world where there's enough for everybody, and we've come into a new kind of situation where what the people really feel is going to be the basis, rather than everything being dominated by the market considerations, which is uppermost in most people's mind. They've been taught that through school and all kinds of institutions, I think. I don't know, that's ruminating.
I would just have to say one thing about that. I came head to head with that kind of idea with a show that I did on pesticides. When the city of New York decided that they were going to eliminate the West Nile virus,
I remember,
and the mosquito population by spraying with helicopters malathion, which is related to the nerve gas that the Nazis used to exterminate people.
Is that related to the thing that just came out of China?
It's absolutely. The malathion is a derivative of Cyclone B, which was used at one of the death camps.
Isn't that what was using the pet food here that came in from China just recently?
I don't know.
There was a bunch of pets were done in by the thing, and they were coming out of China for some reason. I don't know why the hell
that
it
may
would
be,
in
but
there.
I was speaking about the strain
okay,
of the
yeah, I
malathion.
got you. Okay, yeah. I just think
And
that malathion is the same ingredient that they were using coming out of stuff
It could
in
have been.
China. Yeah.
I don't know about that,
Yeah.
but I was with a group in the Green Party, and we formed an adjunct group called the No Spray Coalition. And we had press conference after press conference. We had demonstrations. We had meetings and outreach against this spraying, this crazy spraying of malathion to kill a few mosquitoes, because it's very ineffective. So that's one of the first shows I did, and I did about a dozen, maybe 15, 20 shows on this crazy spraying of not only malathion but other chemicals like
DDT?
well, DDT related, but Anvil. It's a pesticide called Anvil. They were spraying that from trucks. And so this was killing fish. It was killing the fish. It was making people sick. And it was just a stunt that Giuliani decided to do this as a political stunt, in my opinion. And so one of my friends and co-producers, Roy DeRemus, actually followed a Clark pesticide truck as he sprayed the streets of Harlem for over 2 hours.
Really?
He doggedly followed this truck and showed to the world. We got this on the air. It was on Green Vision before any of the networks covered it. How these trucks were spraying this pesticide.
Was he in the spray as he did the videotaping, or did he stay
Pretty
outside
much. He was right in the thick of it.
Did he have a mask or something?
He was in a car. He was in a car with his car. He was in his own car with the windows rolled up.
That's
that was a very
investigative reporting.
It was a very kind of cowboy thing to do, but he did it. And the interesting thing about it is that the networks, when this came to trial, because we had sued the city for spraying this stuff.
Your coalition,
yeah, because it was against the law, because right on the label of the pesticide it says you can't spray this stuff near people. And so we sued them.
A lot of people.
It came to trial. The trial was a media event, and all the networks covered it. When Roy gave his testimony about following these trucks, they suddenly...
With the videotape?
With his camera.
Let's go to the videotape. Yeah, isn't it great you can do that, Rodney King? And, yeah.
So they wanted that to see that tape. They hadn't seen the tape. They ran it in court. But they all came to Green Vision to get that tape.
See?
They didn't, because they didn't do their job.
Right. Oh, that's a very good metaphor.
They didn't do their job.
That public access is going to be able to investigate things in a way they don't have such a commitment to the outdated institutions and ways of doing things as these well-ensconced systems within the system have. So public access is really important in terms of bringing templates that are really relevant to liberating the planet and so forth. Problem is, Carl, we don't have enough time. And I know you brought in a couple of clips, one of which you apparently got political or something about the situation in Palestine.
Right.
And you have a clip about that you wanted to show.
It's about
And you're coming to that from an ecological perspective.
I'm coming from I guess a human perspective. I don't. It's of course there's an ecological perspective as well, but it's basically a tragedy, and that's what the film is called. It's a tragedy in the Holy Land, the Second Intifada.
Yeah, and it's a thing that Joel Covell covers really well. That's Dee Dee Halleck's husband, and he covers.
Well, I know Joel. I know Joel personally.
Great guy, yeah, and everything. But we just did a program a couple of weeks ago with that. But he's ecologically based. So we have a tape. So why don't we set that up? If they could in the control room, set it up. We have a tape. I guess it runs about 5 minutes. And this is about that. And then we come back. We have another one. We'll try and fit it in. So if you could run that tape now, then we're talking with Carl Lawrence, ecologist extraordinaire. So if you could run that first tape then, please. And it's called again what, Carl?
It's called Tragedy in the Holy Land, the Second Intifada.
Okay, yeah. Could you run that tape now then, please? Thank you. There you go.
This building is full of surprises. Something like this. It was so far-fetched, if it had happened.
Old floor wax.
This is the wrong thing.
This is the second tape.
Is this it?
It's the wrong tape, but I guess we can talk about this.
But
This is not about Palestine. I gave them 2 tapes. I thought we were going to have 2 roll-ins. And this is the second one. This is a show I did recently.
Should we change the tape?
Well, you can't because things are rolling. Why don't you just come back to us and then try and change it, okay? Come back quick. Okay, you're back. Listen, we got the wrong tape going. So why don't we change the tape and roll that one and we'll do it. And we're going to have to run quick. That one was the start of a program that is on another theme. So we'll give them a minute or 2 to set that up.
Okay.
And we got the wrong tape.
That was, we were going to talk about the show, and that was my last show.
Right, okay,
Right.
yeah. So let's set it up, and I guess if you got that going and change the tape so that we can show the one that is Tragedy, is that what it's called?
Tragedy in the Holy Land, yeah.
So we got that up and going, and if you do, we could run that now? Okay. Is
Royal
it?
Commission, headed by Earl Peer.
Yeah.
The commission entertained the idea.
Well, we got a problem. I don't know what it is, so we're here talking Tragedy in the Holy Land, and they're going to run that tape. Well, here we are, Joel. Carl. I don't know what they're setting that up.
That was started somewhere in the middle of the show, of the film.
Well,
so
I don't know if you can run it. I don't know what the problem is with running that tape. Anyway, who put that documentary together? The Tragedy.
Dennis Mueller.
Dennis Mueller.
It's MPI Productions.
So, and you're following people who do documentary work and everything.
Yeah,
right?
like John Pilger and.
John Pilger's in town today.
I heard him on the radio. I love John.
John Pilger's great.
I love John.
I wanted to try and get that event last night. We were going to try and do a program with today. We couldn't fit it into his schedule. He's very busy. He's a real pace. That's a really important kind of way of communicating information is through the documentary, and he's one of the best.
Right.
We have a lot of others. Amy Goodman puts good stuff together.
Yeah, and there's
Danny Schechter. People should support
Danny
Schechter's
and
a great guy.
Greenwald
use
or
some
Greenfeld
support,
or whatever his name is, Greenwald.
Greenwald,
Robert
yeah.
Greenwald.
And that's an important. That's like the communication medium of our time, really. Television, multimedia.
I think it's really powerful. I mean, that's why I'm doing it. I think it's quite strong. I mean, you have this. It's concrete evidence, first of all, and my prime example is Rodney King.
Rodney King. Yeah.
Rodney King was shown on videotape being beaten up by the LAPD, and because of videotape, a good chunk of a major city in the United States burned to the ground.
That's right.
So I think. Because it was real. People they couldn't cover it up.
Right.
Videotape has this reality
right,
thing about
absolutely.
It has this concreteness about it.
Right.
You know, it's audio, visual, very powerful. It's clear. And
it's also multimedia. I can remember when John Kennedy and Nixon had their debate, and people who saw it on television were absolutely certain that Kennedy won. And everybody heard on radio through sure that Nixon
didn't he
won.
win?
It was, yeah, but it was a thing. The media, the medium is the message. Mr. McLuhan used to tell us, and we're getting back. And as we walk through life, we're walking through its multisensorial perception of the environment around us. Linear patterns, like Mr. McLuhan used to talk about, linear patterns that the alphabet brings. It strings it all out linear, and even ideas of what rationality is strung out by that. But we're getting back to multimedia. Or multisensorial perception of through the media. It'll probably end up with holography or something like that. Well. But we're getting back to the way we were on the Serengeti Plain before we started extending our consciousness. We're rejoining nature in a certain sense. And we need some templates and an operating manual for Spaceship Earth if we don't blow up the whole thing, which we have the capacity to do.
Oh, very easily.
We crossed that line about 1970.
Well, we were talking about the nuclear winter, and that's a very scary concept. That you would have, there would be. The idea is to, in the freeze movement, was to bring down the number of nuclear weapons to the point where nuclear winter would not happen, which meant that under a certain threshold, there wouldn't be enough ash in the air, in the upper stratosphere, to block out the sun long enough to kill off everything.
Yeah.
You know,
Kill off everything.
Now, if nuclear war broke out, and you had a limited number of explosions, you could prevent. Nuclear winter wouldn't happen because there wouldn't be that much ash. But after a certain threshold, there would be enough ash in the air, and that would kill off kill off all the plant life. So.
Well, we had a thing 65 million years ago when the comet or the asteroid hit down the Yucatan. That did end the dinosaurs.
Right.
Or I was just reading from Jared Diamond the other day, and that not 1 in 1,000 species that have existed exist now. It's been a whole lot of doing in of species as we come up the evolutionary line and so forth.
Right. And that's because they lose habitat.
They lose habitat, and they wiped out the dinosaurs, made it possible for us to emerge, the mammalian line.
Well, we still have people like Bush walking around us. I don't know if we'd eliminated
some
them
people
all.
say it's shift shaping or something, or they're lizards or something. The people that are running things aren't really human beings. They're people who are running things. It gets to extreme dimensions of that kind of thing.
Ronald Reagan started looking like that after a
He's the one who told us that trees pollute the environment. There might be something to that. Some people actually think there's something to that. They're creating carbon dioxide and that kind of stuff. But anyway, it's all an interrelated thing. We live at an incredible time. I don't know. I'm sort of distrustful. I don't know if you could find that tape and run it. You could just start running it. I don't know. If not, we maybe should talk. We're having trouble with
The one he wants is wrong speed. It's recorded in long, and we can do the second one. Though.
Okay, let's run the second one.
Okay.
Then. Okay, thank you, Gloria. It's recorded at the wrong speed. It's slow speed.
Oh,
so it won't work on this dimension. It will only go SP. So we have a second one. Set that up for us. We're not
I thought they were both
playing.
on SP.
Yeah. We thought they were SP, but okay, here's
The whole
the second
operation
job.
was loading
If you could
ash
pump
onto the
sound
barge.
in
How was
here,
that?
please.
Back in the 1960s, when they picked this location, the function of the incinerator was to
Is
burn
this
the
it? Your
garbage,
second piece?
and the ash
I
would be
can't
put
hear.
on a conveyor belt and dumped into the barge.
Uh-huh.
So sometimes you would drop 20 feet through the air. So on a windy day like this, the ash would be carried away. But what they envision now for the MTS is to put containerized boxes on the barge. And when the ocean is rough like this, the crane operator is going to have a difficult time of choosing when he's going to release the load.
Right.
Information was based on comments that were submitted by 3 environmental organizations. We had the opportunity to meet with representatives of the Department of Sanitation to discuss these concerns. Unfortunately, they were not answered in their entirety. It's not the quantity of material that is dredged, it's where it's going to be dredged and what is next to it.
Yeah, we can hear. Are the mics down now?
Warning, you are under video surveillance.
And so are you, buddy. You're under surveillance too. That building right beyond this, the bow of the ship, is the old MTS.
Becomes a haven for urban anglers. Striped bass, bluefish, flounders, and even albacore are among the favorite catch of local fishermen. The lower bay is a migration route for the anadromous and our harbor dinosaur, the Atlantic sturgeon.
Over here, we're willing to put a garbage transfer station in anyone's backyard because garbage is garbage. Everybody hates it.
Kill mosquitoes, natural predators, increased mosquito resistance to the sprays, and are not presently approved for direct application to waterways.
I will stand in front of the first truck and try to go down there.
Alice Masada, did you think? Who stopped? Do you think the
Reed
community
and
stopped
Montgomery
this?
at the bottom of the seawall.
Well, we
that I
stopped
see
the
myself
incinerator.
because I fish there and I eat the fish there.
We'll stop it.
And
You're hopeful.
this air
Oh,
is going to be
yes.
even more polluted.
We put our
And
bodies on
it
the
just
line.
it cannot happen.
Thank you,
It
ma'am.
has to be stopped. It cannot go
Appreciate it.
on.
Thanks for
It's
being
already
on
horrendous,
my
and it's
show.
only going to
Thanks.
Okay, that was okay. Cut the mic, cut this out. Okay, great.
That was part of the show.
That was part of the show. Yeah, but that was we got reverb here. But that was the thing you were talking about, the West Nile virus. Huh?
No, well, and partially.
You cut back on the mics here. Okay, go ahead.
Are we on?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're on. But
Yeah,
we're getting
that
reverb.
was
We're getting reverb in the studio. Go ahead.
That was Mitchell Cohen. He's one of the
Oh
founders.
yeah,
of
I
the
know Mitchell well. Yeah.
Okay.
Real good guy. Yeah.
So that was Mitchell at this meeting that was called to stop or to have the Department of Sanitation answer questions about why they're pushing this marine transfer station in Gravesend Bay, which will involve dredging up the bay. It will involve bringing in 100 trucks extra a day into the neighborhood, which is going to increase asthma. The dredging would release all these toxins from this illegal incinerator that they had running for 30 years at that. You remember that shed that I showed you?
Yeah.
Well, there was an incinerator there. They would take the trucks would come up. They would dump it into this incinerator and burn it. Then they would take the ash, right, and load it onto barges. The ash was just dumped from the side of the pier into these barges. All this very toxic ash. It fell into the bay, and so now there's like layers of silt and toxic cadmium and mercury and probably PCBs and lead and other heavy metals that are sitting at the bottom of this bay. Of Gravesend Bay, which is a beautiful place, actually.
Yeah, it looks beautiful, right?
It's well, it looks beautiful, and it is fairly safe now because the silt has and the mud is keeping those toxins fairly benign.
Right.
They can't be released as long as that silt and mud stays put. But what they want to do is build this huge marine transfer station, right, to allow these ocean-going barges to come in, dump the city's garbage in these barges, and haul it off to someplace unknown. So to get that to happen, they have to dredge the bay.
And that's going to
because
break up all the
because
heavy
these
metals, huh?
because these barges are so their hulls are so much deeper than the normal the other barges that were being used to go to Staten Island. So that's going to just dredge up all this material from the floor.
And this ought to be called attention to this, and to
then we did.
corrective action. And you did, and you actually had an effect. And it came out of public access.
It came out of the community organizing.
All right, there's a link between community organizing and public access communication of people community organizing.
Right.
In a certain sense, a way of communicating, because it doesn't come up very much in terms of the established networks very much. They serve mostly the interests of those who presume to have a leadership understanding of how a certain technological system can be done. Usually it benefits very much those who are very much benefited by the system, don't you think?
Yeah,
and the people don't have a very effective way of having an influence on things, even though they may be, and increasingly are, well informed about the full implications of some proposed action that people are doing, like, say, invading Iraq.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I think I may have been the only camera at that meeting. I don't know, but it was 1,000, as you saw in the shot. There was 1,000 people there.
Right.
And it was an important meeting. And there's going to be another meeting, which it's important that I say this now, that there's going to be another meeting about the Gravesend Marine Transfer Station when the Department of the Environment for the state has their they're required to have a public meeting before they give a permit to the city for this thing to happen.
Do you think it's good to have public hearings on
I do.
matters that have to do with that? There will be a lot of people who will say, well, they're deers. They just don't understand the way we do. The leaders of the society will say they don't understand about how, you know, they think they're uninformed. They're great unwashed masses and so forth. And the idea of having input from the people, that's public access is kind of major trump card, is that they're having Hyde Park Corner ability for the people to have a communication. When most of history, people have not had anything to say, and everybody assumed there was no reason to listen to the people because they were just people to be either coerced or co-opted by the leaders of the society, and that attitude still applies in terms of the operation of this spaceship Earth, don't you think?
Yeah, I think there might be some correlation with the church in medieval times and the corporation now, in terms of controlling communication.
Yeah, of communication and of the decision-making process, and it's always been just a few. And the people that are in that position, Uber mentioned, they had Nazis who thought that they were people that were superior, and there's all kinds of nationalist claims. Napoleon thought he was superior.
Right.
March to Moscow. Did you ever see that thing where he marches out? It was that thick when it leaves France, and it goes down like this, and it gets out there, and then it comes back, and then by the time few that got back to France, it was just very tiny, you know.
Wow.
But they have the idea that we are superior. It's sort of built into the idea of nation state even. We're better than them. Or football teams, and this idea about how some people are better than others, the leadership gets it in their mind that they know and the people don't. And it would be better on the whole if the people had more of a say in the way things are done and the basic designs of our institutions, do you think?
Well,
democracy it's called, real democracy, functioning democracy.
I don't know. That's a kind of philosophical question.
It is,
and
but it's important.
I kind of like to stay on the more practical things that I know about, because but I know what you're talking about. With this, the hierarchy of New York City is deciding on building these things. They have the money, they have the manpower, they have the wherewithal to build this giant facility. The people, you and I, and and people that go to these meetings and are aware, can do something about it. But yeah, they have decided that because of community pressure, because there was a problem with all these trucks and Fresh Kills landfill being filled to the capacity that it is. I mean, it's a tragedy. It was an insult to the people of Staten Island that this thing existed for so long. So this is a stopgap solution to a thing like the Staten Island landfill. But what they're going to be doing is they're transferring all that garbage that was going to Staten Island to some other place in South Carolina or Pennsylvania or some other place that they have managed to pay off, some poor community that managed to pay them off with maybe some money for schools or some money for
that's co-opting.
A baseball diamond, or who knows what.
And if that doesn't work, they can always use coercion. They got all the state power of the police and the military and the comitatus.
Yeah, they can just dump it. I guess just dump it on them. Yeah.
Well, that's basically what's happened. You would have the leaders. I think the people have always been, in a certain sense, wallowing around in the mud and being do what they told. We even had chattel slavery, for crying out loud. Chattel slavery we had. And then Marx said we got wage slavery now, and the assets are all owned by a tiny group. They set the template, and everybody else is either supposed to just top your hat and say, yes, sir, tell us what to do, more or less. But it's changing. I think there's a growing awareness among people that the democratic process is something that could involve greater numbers of people in a process that does affect their lives, don't you think?
Well, I think yes, yes, and my idea of democracy is direct democracy.
Yeah.
Meaning that everybody has a vote, and they not only just vote for some representative, they vote on issues, like in Switzerland. You know, I mean, people vote in Switzerland, I guess, on a monthly basis on various things.
They have that unique thing in Switzerland. What do they call the basic unit? I forget what they call it. They have it goes way back. It goes way back there. I forget what they call it. Comitas? And I forget what they call it. They do have that.
You mean the provinces, or?
No, I'm not sure. They have a unique system in Switzerland of participatory democracy to a large degree, although I still think you have power structures and power and money-directed kind of ability for some people to lead, and you have a leadership element, so-called political or business leadership.
Well, I was trying to find out about it because I've been in Switzerland a lot.
Talk to Lucy Commissar. They're the ones who started all the secret banking, and now it's gone to the Cayman Islands, to the Isle of Man and so forth. And it's pig heaven because you don't have any international laws that can enforce things, and people can do whatever, hide money, get away from the taxes, do all kinds of things.
I was actually doing a documentary about that as well.
Well,
about,
I think
about the Swiss banking system at one point.
Talk to Lucy Commissar, Komisar. She's the lead. She put a chapter with that fellow, the Hitman, the guy who did the Hitman, Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
I've heard about that film.
Yeah, they put out a new book with that, and he's got a new book out too. And that's really something because it's you've got a small group of plutocrats who run everything in a very real sense. But you're beginning to get some things coming out of Venezuela and that kind of stuff, and there's some reaction to the arrogance of power being directed by the United States of America around the world.
Right.
We've never been in such low esteem, and it may have a promise that among the people there will be some stirrings if we come up with some alternatives that we could maybe make a fundamental change rather than having it all being led by a few people, which is the pattern coming out of history. And they don't have a vision. If they had a vision that was liberating or appropriate to what the times require, that is the leadership, then that would be different. But they don't have a vision that is appropriate to what the future either allows in a new liberating way or requires if we're not going to blow the whole thing up.
Well, people in power now are like people who have been in power, throughout the centuries. They have a privileged position in society. They can isolate themselves from the common man. They can live in a golf course-like community and surround themselves with guards and things like that, and become fairly isolated, which is what this film was also about to a degree. The settlements in Palestine.
That's why that one we couldn't run apparently.
Right,
with
the
the wrong
settlements
speed.
in Palestine are exactly like that. I mean, they're isolated communities. They're like gated communities, much more gated.
For
than
the
they are
Uber,
here.
that's right. That's for the Ubermenschen. That's for the Overmenschen. That's what they had in Nazi Germany. They had the Uber, and then you had the Untermenschen, and that was the Jews were the Untermenschen. Now the Jews become the Ubermenschen over the Wogs.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess they...
Or in the minds of many, is a great arrogance. And the United States behind that is backing that. The United States behind that thinks that they have a vision of these leadership, but they don't. The point is they don't have a vision that the future requires. That's what I'm trying to make. And it might be from efforts like what you're doing and the involvement of the people where that vision might come more than it will within the established institutions, which are all, in a sense, sycophant to the established power relations that are coming out of history that's been transcended by the zeitgeist. Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, money talks, and
that's the only thing that seems to talk now in those circles.
The deals are made, and things are pushed through, and I guess the analogy would be that there's a bureaucracy here in the city, and in this whole country, in the various levels. There's always a bureaucracy that functions pretty much on its own, and deals are cut, and people keep their jobs, so when you have a system like that,
scientific process is throttled.
The people take a back seat to that process, or
they don't dare question it. And it might be our fault because we haven't come up with an effective campaign to really challenge them in an effective way that the times require. The intellectuals may be falling down on the job too because everything seems to be just drifting along. Where's Voltaire and where are the real, even Fuller and some of the people we were talking about that were characteristic of the 60s, it seems to be there doesn't seem to be adequate critique of the system that there was, say, in the time of Vietnam or something, or in the time of the 60s.
What I was trying to get at with that analogy, though, in terms of Israel, is that the Israelis have cloaked this settlement process in this web of legal procedure and bureaucracy. So it looks like they're operating legally because they'll say that an absentee landlord or an abandoned, they'll call a piece of property that they've systematically cleansed abandoned property.
Yeah, yeah.
And therefore it's up for sale, and they'll start building a settlement on it.
I think we did some of that sort of thing with the Amerindians in this continent, don't you, in the 19th century?
I don't know about that.
Well, I don't think we kept any single treaty we ever made with the American Indian people
It's
by
always
the
wrapped
European.
in this legal,
yeah, they will wrap it that way, and then they say that they are legitimate, historically legitimate in anything outside of this pattern that they have, the corporations that run the world. They think they're historically legitimate because they're the carriers of the leading edge of humanity's capability to set designs and to set up social patterns and so forth, and it just happens to serve them.
Right.
You know,
it sounds like the Third Reich to me.
It does, and there's a lot of examples of that, and it's very worrying, and we need some alternatives. And I think the alternative thinking is going to come out of programs like Green Vision, if I may, and let 1,000 acorns bloom and so forth, and things come. And it's beginning to be some sort of a hope. I think the public access, we're both members of ACAP,
Right,
we're both members of public...
Which is a great organization.
I think it is, because it sets up a system where the people can communicate some of their concerns and that they really matter, instead of just getting it all, the thoughts of our so-called leadership that comes on the networks and that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. And so we'll keep pounding away at it.
Good, yeah.
Well, with our limited resources.
Yeah.
I mean, the networks have millions on billions of dollars to do their thing with, and wonderfully able technical people to get their stuff out there, like we were talking about before when we were watching tape.
Yeah.
And what do we have? I mean, we have our public access facilities, which are great, and just our energy.
Yeah.
Because none of us are getting paid to do this. I mean, we're just people with ideas.
Yeah.
And when I go to your annual party, I see all these people that are doing that, and it's really quite exciting to me.
Well, it's a hope, I think.
You know, all these people that you've interviewed, I suppose, are at this party, and the other
producers. Unfortunately,
and I see a whole room of these people. It's
unfortunately,
really
so many of the people I've interviewed over the long haul are dying with alarming regularity. But anyway, there's new people coming. In the youth, there's hope, and there's hope in public access. We should support it. The citizenry at large should support it. Right. And because it's an important institution to involve the people. I think the voice of the people is really important in a full sense, like participatory, like you said.
Right.
Carl, sorry we had a little trouble with the technical.
That's all right.
Thanks a lot for coming.
It's great to be on your show, Harold.
Oh, it's a great pleasure talking to you always. My best to all the colleagues over there at BCAT and so forth. We got to keep touch, and let's try to get together at the picnic this year.
Okay,
huh?
I love it.
Your pleasure to have the perception. Carl Lawrenson, architect, hadn't realized. You were impressed by Rachel Carson?
Oh yeah, I've read Rachel Carson on the trains.
I know.
Rachel was quite brave.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, thanks for the good work. It's really important, and I really appreciate your coming in. And we invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again tomorrow, and that's it for now. Once again, sorry we had some of those technical problems, but thanks a lot for putting up with it. It's really a pleasure to see you, Carl.
Well, I hope you'll invite me back.
I will. We got to stay in steady touch. Yeah, right. Okay. Thanks for viewing. Okay. Okay, I think we're out now.
Okay, good.
Okay. And I think my